Most beginner gardeners either overcrowd their plants or give them way too much space, and both hurt your harvest. Today, I'm going to show you why plant spacing really matters, and I'm going to teach you my simple 1-2-3 method that will show you how to space out every single plant in your garden so you never make that mistake again. All the pro gardeners are talking about how we need to space our plants properly, but nobody's telling you why spacing actually matters. Here are the 3 reasons why you should pay attention to how much space you give every plant. The first is probably the most obvious, and that is sunlight. Every single plant that you grow in your garden needs sun to grow. Sunlight allows plants to get all the energy they need and to photosynthesize, to turn air, water, and soil into food that helps them grow bigger. But here's the thing, not every plant needs the same amount of sunlight. We're going to keep that in mind when we learn the 1-2-3 method. Beyond sunlight, plants also need room under the soil where the sun doesn't reach. Every single plant needs an ample amount of space for their roots to spread out and to grow, to reach out and grab air, water, and nutrients. So when you're spacing your plants, you've got to think about their roots, not just about how much sunlight they'll get from above. The third reason spacing matters is nutrients, because these plants don't just need sun to get energy or space to spread their roots. They need the ability to take up nutrients from the soil to help them grow to their fullest potential. So as you space out your plants, you want to be sure each plant has enough room to get the nutrients it needs to thrive. So now with those 3 spacing needs in mind, let's tackle my 1-2-3 method. So I divide plants by the harvest that I'm getting from them. So I use this method called leaves, roots, and fruit. I talk about it in this book I wrote in 2022. Leaves, roots, and fruit, you can get it. I'll put a link right below this video. So leaves are the 1, roots are 2, and fruit is 3. And if you think about it, plants produce leaves first, that's why they're at the first level. Then they start to grow really deep roots, that's why they're number 2. And then they produce flowers and fruit as they start to reproduce, and that is step 3. So at that first level, when plants are just producing leaves, think about their sunlight needs. They do need sun, but not that much. About 4 or so hours of sunlight will do the trick. And that sunlight can actually be speckled light. It can be filtered light. It doesn't have to be direct sunlight in order for leaves to grow. Then if you're thinking about leaf plants in terms of their need for room for their roots underground, leafy greens have very little roots. In fact, most of their roots are just right along the surface of the soil. So when you're considering that level 1 plant, the need for root growth right underneath the soil is so minimal. Finally, think about nutrient needs for that level 1 plant, for the leafy greens. If you think about NPK, what we see on most fertilizer bottles, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, leafy growth comes mostly from nitrogen. Yes, there are other nutrients that help make leaves form, but for the most part, the primary nutrient that leafy greens are pulling from the soil is nitrogen. So their main need is just nitrogen to get that full leafy growth that you can cut from again and again. So this is step 1. This is level 1. This is leaves. And when it comes to plant spacing, remember 4 hours of sunlight, minimal root needs, and only nitrogen to get them to their full harvest potential. Now, level 2 is going to have a little bit more spacing needs. When it comes to sunlight to grow these deeper roots in the ground, we're going to need more sunlight on these plants. We're thinking about more like 6 hours of sun. And we want to be sure that more of this sun is direct sunlight. You can have some filtered light, but for the most part, we need 6 good direct hours of sunlight on these plants. Then, if you're thinking about root space, it's going to be quite different from the level 1 plants. These plants are literally being grown for their roots. Think about potatoes, beets, carrots, onions, garlic. So you need to have more space underneath the soil for these roots to fully grow and form. Finally, think about nutrients. So those leafy greens, they really only need nitrogen to get to that harvest stage. But for root plants, they don't need nearly as much nitrogen, but they are going to need more potassium. This helps grow a plant really nice and strong. It gives us a really strong stem and helps it through that strong root production. So they need a little bit of nitrogen to get going, but not too much. Otherwise, you'll have lots of leaves on your root plants and not enough roots. This brings us to level 3. Level 3 plants are those that are producing flowers and fruit, and their needs for spacing are quite different than levels 1 and 2. Level 3 plants are going to be growing to the full potential of the plant. They're going all the way to seed. And so these plants are going to need a lot more sunlight. Instead of 4 or 6 hours, these plants need a minimum of 8 to 10 hours of direct sunlight a day. It can't be dappled sun, it can't be filtered, it needs to be direct sunlight on these plants to get them all the way to full maturity during their season of growth. Next, we want to think about root growth for these plants. So unlike the plants we're growing for roots that are growing really deep, thick roots right under the soil surface, these fruiting plants, they're going to be sending roots deep down into the soil. Not just 4 to 6 inches down, but 8, 10, 12 inches down into the soil. This is good news because they're not going to need a lot of root space right at the soil surface. Instead, they need a lot of root space deeper down into the beds. Finally, think about nutrient needs for these plants. Yes, they're going to need nitrogen for that first stage of growth as they start to form leaves, and they'll need a little bit of nitrogen as they grow to their full maturity, but not too much. Otherwise, your fruiting plants will never fruit. They also need a little bit of potassium to start to form really strong stems that'll anchor the plant and to give it a nice root system. But most importantly for these plants, they need phosphorus. They're going to need phosphorus to form flowers and fruit that are healthy and ready to harvest. So I don't know if you're catching on to the magic of the way the 1, 2, 3 system works when it comes to plant spacing, but it is pretty awesome. So check out how the 1, 2, 3 method works in this one bed. This is a 4x8 raised bed, and I've got 1, 2, and 3 level plants all growing together. It's pure magic. So on this arch trellis, I've got peas growing. That's a level 3. They're going to grow tall, get all the sun they need. Then I've got onions. That's a level 2. They're going to be forming mostly underground using that root space there. Then I've got broccoli. This is a level 3. It's going to get nice and big, get plenty of sunshine, all it needs to fruit. We got another row of onions here, also a level 2 plant. I snuck in a little bit of cilantro. Those would count as leafy greens, level 1. And then we've got a ton of beautiful lettuce growing right here. A level 1 plant, doesn't need much space, doesn't need much nutrients. And then even on the edge here, I snuck in one more level 2 plant, some radishes. They're going to be growing right underground and get all the nutrients and the sunlight that they need. In just this one space, I've literally planted hundreds of plants and none of them are struggling. They're all thriving together because the 1, 2, 3 method, it works. So here's the most amazing thing. The 1, 2, 3 method doesn't just mean that you get more harvest. It actually means that taking care of your garden is easier because all these plants planted together in the 1, 2, 3 method actually makes the garden easier to water, less weeding, and no need to fertilize. So if you're into making gardening easier, simpler, and less overwhelming, then you better subscribe, and I'll see you next time.